Popoff from the Contrarians here. Okay, I guess this has opened a can of worms. I have to do a third episode based on this concept of top bands of all time. Because yeah, I mean, I'm getting asked for my own personal list, which I don't think matters that much. I mean, but you know, I obviously screwed it up a little bit by saying that the previous lists had a little bit of my personal opinion put into it. But you know, I don't think I'm wrong about you know, the idea that when my own personal opinion was put into that original top 10 bands of all time and the follow up, the 11 to 20 episode, which didn't solve anything. I was still getting a lot of complaints there. But when I put my own personal opinion into it, I was trying to say, I personally believe that these bands are great for these various reasons. It wasn't that I liked them kind of thing. So even then I was trying to be a little scientific about it. Not this time. This time it's literally, you asked for it, but you know, like I say, this is just my personal opinion now. This is my favorite 10 bands of all time. So it's not exactly the top 10 bands of all time. It's my own favorite top 10 bands of all time. And I'm very surprised by this list. I'm kind of shocked by the way this has played out, because a lot of things have moved around since the last time I ever thought about this or talked about it on my podcast, History in 5 Songs, or video shows or whatever. So here we go. Number 10, I'm putting in AC/DC. I love AC/DC to death. I've had them as number 1 before. I've had them as number 2. I've had them as number 3. And now I've got them as number 10. Pretty bizarre. But when I thought about it and started going through the albums and being a little ruthless about it, I realized that, you know, there may be a good half the albums I'm not massive fans of, kind of thing. I love the whole concept of AC/DC. I would say Flick of the Switch, Highway to Hell, and Power Age would probably be in and among my top, all would be in my top 30 albums of all time by anybody, I would say. That's another show. Maybe I'll do, you know, as the next layer down from this thing. I don't know. So yeah, AC/DC, love them to death. Like I say, little bit of a one-trick pony, right? The lyrics aren't any great shakes. Like I say, it can be a little patchy here and there. So I just thought, let's be really ruthless about this. And as I'm laying them out here, it dropped all the way to 10. Okay, number 9, I've got Queen. Now, Queen is on this list because of how absolutely crazy, drop dead genius I think Queen 2, or 2, Sheer Heart Attack, Night at the Opera, Day at the Races, News of the World, and Jazz are. And that's a lot of albums. And Jazz might actually be my favorite. You can check out our old Contrarians episode where I actually do call it my favorite Queen album. I'm almost still thinking it is my favorite Queen album. But I actually have a lot more appreciation than I used to for Hot Space and The Game. I like those, almost similar now, bizarrely. And then it really does drop from there. I'm not a big fan of The Works and Miracle and A Kind of Magic. In fact, there's a lot to dislike about all those albums, especially Made in Heaven. So yeah, I think they really drop off and become mortals. I thought they were literally close to immortals, like or geniuses, put it that way, creative geniuses. From Queen through Jazz, and then they really kind of pooched it for the last bunch of albums. So that's why they go down to number 9. As Pete and I did on that show a long time ago, if the world ended January 1st, 1980, Queen would be probably number 1 on my whole list. Another band very similar to that, but actually doing way better and giving us way more better music later. So I have them one notch higher. Judas Priest. Love Judas Priest to death. You know, number 8 is not a slight. There's just all bands I totally love. But again, absolute, you know, bank of genius from, let's say, Sad Wings through to Killing Machine / Hellbent for Leather. And then just a lot of good music that I absolutely appreciate. The next 5 albums almost. I actually like Turbo quite a bit. Painkiller's okay. Ram It Down's okay. I mean, all of that stuff is good. And then Firepower and Invincible Shield, I really like a lot. And I get a lot of value out of the stuff in between as well. So Priest is a huge deal to me. I love rock and roll even, right? But like I say, just like Queen, those albums, they were just head and shoulders above anybody else making heavy metal music, or even music for that matter, because they are so good. You know, specifically speaking, during Sin After Sin and Stained Class, I would say, right? They were just absolute Mensa mad scientists at that point. Number 7, I've got Deep Purple. And Deep Purple is high on my list. I got a lot of complaints, actually, for putting Deep Purple on the original top 10 list. People were saying, nah, Deep Purple doesn't deserve to be here. What about this band? What about this band? But, you know, I absolutely appreciate this band. Mark 1 is dead to me. I hate that material. But after that, super important in the invention of heavy metal within rock. As I've always said, between Black Sabbath, Paranoid, In Rock, and Very Heavy, Very Humble, In Rock is actually the best album out of all of those, the most modern thinking, the most inventive of a new genre. In 1970, just doesn't happen to be the first, right? And then I love the next bunch of albums. I love Burn. I get a lot of value out of Stormbringer, Come Taste the Band. I love The Reunion, Perfect Strangers, House of Blue Light. I like Battle Rages On. I even like Slaves and Masters. And then, as I've said, I just think they deserve to be high on the list because they get so much better and smarter, and Ian gets to be a better lyricist, and they get this amazing production values through Michael Bradford and Bob Ezrin in the Steve Morse era. And I thought Equals One was a fantastic album as well, with Simon McBride. So this is a band that is like the very best example, along with the likes of, I always say this, Uriah Heep, Motorhead, to some extent Cheap Trick, of making a lot of really, really good music in their later years. And I think they need to be rewarded for that. So I've got them at number 7. Number 6, I've got Black Sabbath. Again, if the world ended January 1st, 1980, Black Sabbath would be in my top 3. Absolutely. But because the world went on, just like Judas Priest, though, they gave us a lot of value. Love to Death, Heaven and Hell, and Mob Rules, and Born Again. I really like Eternal Idol. After that, I'm not a big fan. I'm not a big fan of 13 either. So they're a little penalized. They go down to number 6, unfortunately, because Black Sabbath is really about 4 different bands. You know, and just case in point, every time anybody tries to rank their favorite bands of all time, they always bring up that asterisk with Black Sabbath. It's like Black Sabbath, but only up till the end of the Oz years and stuff. So everybody recognizes that this is a bunch of different bands. It's barely one band. Number 5, I've got The Damned. I literally, as I was putting this list together, my heart has them at number 1. But again, just like all of these, I tried to be a little more ruthless and went through them and how much of that album do I really like? A third, a quarter. So that happened a little bit here and there with The Damned. So I had to knock them down based on that. But as I've said many times, you know, if I made this list and talked about bands that I've played a lot in recent years, I'd have to put XTC and The Jam on this list. I'd have to put Clutch on this list. I'd have to put the Manic Street Preachers here. But The Damned is one of those bands that fits that category as well. I've played them more in the last 20 years than most of the bands on this list. And they also are on here because they have a long enough catalog. You know, The Jam doesn't get here. You know, I've as an aside, I've also ruled out a couple bands that I've often talked about as my favorite of all times because of short catalogs, and that would be Gillan and Max Webster. But The Damned gets on here because it is a long catalog. I like all eras of the catalog. There are many different bands along the way, but there's no chunk of it anywhere that I don't appreciate. I just love all the changes they've gone through. My favorites would be Machine Gun Etiquette and Strawberries, probably. But love all sorts of stuff. I love So Who's Paranoid? I think that's the exact title. As a later one, right? So tons of great music out of this band. Absolutely. They come to town. I go see them. I meet up with them, which is kind of nice. I get to talk to the guys. But absolute genius band. They always make me happy. Interesting stuff. Punk, post-punk, goth. They do many, many different things. Really cool lyrics. Just a smart, cool band. Now, here's one I rarely have had in my list. Number 4, Rolling Stones. Now, I had this band at number 1 on my greatest bands of all time, objectively speaking. Here we are in the completely subjective list, right? My own favorites. And I have rarely ever had them. I don't think I've ever had them in my top 10 before. And now I've got them at number 4. The reason for this is another band that I've played shockingly regularly throughout my entire life, essentially starting probably in around 1978. So at about 15 years old. So that's late for me. You know, I was a massive music fan for already about 5 years at that point. But starting around then and starting with the Rolling Stones Renaissance, which actually starts at Some Girls, 78, and then it goes through 79 in Emotional Rescue. And then once I went off to university, there was that big Rolling Stones hubbub period. I got to see them in 89. I got to see them at SARS-Stock as well, here in Toronto, you know, headlining over AC/DC and Rush, right? Remember that? But this is a band that I constantly play those late 70s albums. I've gotten a lot more into the early 70s albums as well. So your Exile on Main Street and It's Only Rock and Roll and Goat's Head Soup. My favorite Stones albums would probably be in order: Some Girls, Tattoo You, Black and Blue, Emotional Rescue, It's Only Rock and Roll, Exile, Beggar's Banquet. So yeah, I'm a big fan of a lot of this catalog. And what I love about the Stones is that they've stayed with us, they've stayed active, they've stayed entertaining, whether they're doing interviews or making music. They've had solo careers, which have been interesting. I love Keith Richards' solo albums, especially the first one, Talk Is Cheap. And I get a lot of value out of the rare times that they actually put out new music. I guess this band really stretches it out, but I have no problem with the Big Bang, the Bigger Bang, and Voodoo Lounge and all that later stuff. Steel Wheels is that first tour that I saw with them back in '89. So yeah, this is a band that, and I also love, I know I've said this before, but I love the fact that this band has been around my entire life, you know, basically starting in 1963. I think that's funny, right? And, you know, just this almost the same way that I always say that I find it very poignant that, that Rush and Kiss have been around my entire conscious music life. Like I got Rush and Kiss as new releases in 1974, right? So I've been around for the entire ride, I guess is what I'm saying. And it's almost the very start of me getting into music. So yeah, I love that about the Stones. You know, I love that about the Stones the same way I love that about Queen Elizabeth, right? May she rest in peace, that she's been around my whole life, right? Okay, number 3, I've got Blue Oyster Cult. Love Blue Oyster Cult to death, and among my favorite albums of all time. So in order for Blue Oyster Cult, I would put Fire of Unknown Origin these days, followed by Cultosaurus Erectus, followed by Mirrors, followed by Spectres, Agents of Fortune. I might even go Revolution by Night before I get into those first 3. Those first 3 I still have a problem with. But I love the reunion music. I thought Heaven Forbid was great too. And obviously I've written like 5 Blue Oyster Cult related books, or 3 on Blue Oyster Cult and 2 absolute nutcase Imaginos related books, right? So this to me is a band that, again, subjectively speaking, even objectively speaking, a lot of guys were saying on those previous 2 episodes that I should have included them objectively, and you could make a case for that, because this is a band with a long, varied catalog. It's very smart. The lyrics are incredible. There's pop, there's ballads, there's heavy metal, there's the integration of keyboards. There's going through lots and lots of phases. There's a lot of success as well. So that's an objective list thing, right? For me anyways. We've got, you know, a double live album, a single live album, a double live album. And then later, when it matters less, you get even more live albums. So it's a long, varied, interesting, thoughtful, smart, creative catalog. So objectively they could have been there, but subjectively I've got them at number 3, which is really, really bloody high, right? Number 2, I'm going with ZZ Top. Again, I'm just amazed, for starters, how much I still play ZZ Top in the 2000s, and finding a lot of value. I mean, I'm not the biggest fan of the first 2 records, but I still get a lot of value out of Tres Hombres and Fandango. But my favorite ZZ Top albums are Tejas, followed by Degueo, followed probably by Rhythmine. And this is the other thing. So I still get a laugh out of the 80s albums. They're not my favorite albums of the catalog. They're kind of my least favorites, but I still like El Loco. But what I love to death about ZZ Top is that Billy, when he transformed this band into an even more modern band, into kind of like a 90s band with Antenna, I really loved. And then, XXX is interesting, but then he goes back to, he gets a Greg Morrow drumming. That's a big secret kind of thing about the band, but the drumming on Rhythmine is absolutely top shelf, and it is actually Greg Morrow. But the guitar playing and the songwriting and stuff is back to the roots, but it's still very bright and shiny, interesting 90s production values, but it sounds very analog in terms of the performance, if you get what I mean. And then Mescalero is an absolute laugh riot all the way through. The production values, the variety of songs, the arrangements, the Dusty Hill singing, the Billy gravelly singing. I was a little disappointed with La Futura, right? As I've always called it, I think I got the title right? I've always called it, to me, La Futura is a shorter, less ambitious version of Mescalero with worse songs, but it's still in that exact same beloved, awesome idea. And Gots to Get Paid is a masterpiece. That's by far and away the best song on the album, right? And then they have the EP there as well, kind of a weird close to the catalog, if in fact that is the close. I hope it's not. I hope they do something with Elwood. I love Elwood. He's great. So yeah, ZZ Top I've got there, just because of just the amazingness of the small version of ZZ Top, the ZZ Top in a Matchbox band that you get on DeGueo and Tejas. Billy Gibbons is in my top 3 guitarists. Just Heard It on the X and Beer Drinkers and Hellraisers, which, by the way, is I named my Motorhead book that because they covered that song and I thought it was just such a cool thing, right? Which you can get that at martinpopoff.com as well. I haven't ever done a ZZ Top book, but yeah, ZZ Top again, rewarded as I look at this list, rewarded for being on this list for the exact same reason Deep Purple is here, that I love that whole later bank of music that they made. So Deep Purple and ZZ Top, I salute you for being actually the only 2 bands on this list where they're being rewarded for that amazing thing of having this great music up here. I mean, very soon on this list, I would have Uriah Heep, who are super in that category of all those later Bernie Shaw albums are so good, right? So they would be rewarded for that too. They didn't quite make my top 10, but they would be soon. Okay, so number 1, my personal favorite band of all time, as we speak here on April 7th, 2025. I haven't checked the news lately, or we're an hour into the market. I don't know if it's Black Monday or not as I'm saying this. I'm going to check right after. But anyways, my number 1 favorite band of all time is Thin Lizzy. Now, Thin Lizzy is here. The catalog is long enough. It ends in 1983. It's getting close, but it is a long enough catalog, I think, to qualify. And I had to put them here because I absolutely would put an album like my favorite Thin Lizzy album, Renegade, in my top 10 albums of all time. Black Rose would be probably in my top 10 or 20. Oddly enough, when it comes to full albums, there wouldn't be too many more that would make it that high, but I would have many, many, many Thin Lizzy songs in my top 50 or say 75, right? And the other thing about Thin Lizzy that I love is that I love all the eras, and there's not a single album here I don't appreciate quite a bit. And that includes the 3 Eric Bell albums. That includes Nightlife, for the actually the heavier songs and the mellowest songs, and not particularly the funky R&B stuff on there. Probably, if I was to think about it, probably least favorite album just might even be Vagabonds, right? Over and above Shades of a Blue Orphanage and Thin Lizzy, oddly enough. But starting with Fighting and moving forward, just love every one of those albums. Chinatown is way up my list as well. Thunder and Lightning, I got a lot of time for as well. So it's a long, long catalog of amazing, amazing music. great, interesting, different productions. Just the twin leads that you get. Phil Lynott as a vocalist, Phil Lynott as a lyricist, storyteller, all that stuff. So yeah, I have to put Thin Lizzy here. But as I look at this list, it's pretty funny. As I look at this list, I see a lot to complain about, even in my top 10 bands of all time. And then the next 10, there are, I suppose the complaints grow even a little larger, but same kind of deal. There's so many bands that I just love that I would have to put in here. And frankly, if I went from 11 to 20, that's when I might say, okay, you're allowed to come back in here, Gillan and Max Webster, and I don't know, maybe the Police, even maybe Soundgarden, even. I'm probably not 11 to 20, but I'd start allowing those shorter catalogs. And then if I went really crazy and allowed one record bands, Sex Pistols would be way up this list, right? But I'm not going to allow a one record band in here. So there you go. AC/DC 10, Queen, Judas Priest, Deep Purple, Black Sabbath, The Damned, Rolling Stones, Blue Oyster Cult, ZZ Top, Thin Lizzy. Let us know what you think in the comments about this. Whether in any other variant of this you want me to do. But there you go. You can join our Patreon. Who have I done books on here? Yeah, Thin Lizzy got a bunch of books. We talked about Blue Oyster Cult. No Rolling Stones books. I got my Damned book where I go through every single song they ever did. That's almost my favorite book I've ever done, so I can supply that. I've got Sabbath books, Purple books, big Deep Purple stuff coming down the pipes. Actually, that has been announced yet, so I can talk about that. So I have done the largest book I've ever done, ever, and that's even bigger than this one you see right behind me here. Where is it? Over there. This Iron Maiden book is coming out on my birthday, April 28th. It's 666 pages. I dare say the Deep Purple is going to come in longer than that. So that's coming up soon. Like I say, biggest book I've ever done. Judas Priest album by album just came out. Queen album by album I can still supply, and Queen live I can still supply, and I can still supply AC/DC at 50. So there you go. Let us know what you think. You can join our Patreon. You can join our Ko-Fi. We've got merch, all that stuff. I am burnt out. Well, I hope I haven't burnt you out, and I hope this hasn't worn you out. But there you go. My personal top 10 favorite albums of all time.